everyone, and welcome to this presentation. The presentation this evening has changed from the original speaker. Unfortunately, Tim Briggs, for those of you who know him, isn't too well, and I know that we all send him our best, and hopefully I'll get to talk to him in the next few days. The presentation we've got this evening is from another past president, our immediate past president, Jimmy Quinn, who's going to talk to you about his perspective on coming from, or coming as a veteran into the construction and health and safety business. I'm sure there are more than an hour's worth of stories here and tales that were fascinating to listen to. But there is a presentation. Jimmy's going to share it very shortly, and if you've any questions, please put them into the chat. It started off with a capital Q, so that IOSH, who's monitoring these, can record them, and we'll ask Jimmy at the end for some feedback. Jimmy, I've lost you on my pitch now. I don't know where you've got. There's so many people coming. Oh, there you go. It's over to you.
Many thanks, Chair. It's lovely to be here, Tom, and great to be in this wonderful branch. And you know, thank you very much, Chris Nag, for getting the message and passing on the details as well to Tom, for me to step in for someone who I respect hugely, and someone who's a bit of a rock to me as I came through my presidential year and continued on in my career coming through council. As Tom says, this is my perspective. This is sort of Jimmy Quinn. I like to say I'm as far away from this perceived archetypal health and safety person as that we all sort of detest, and the sort of person that we, you know, this sort of the attitude from people that see us as these safety police. I'll always operate in the grey area. I say that I can't operate in the black and white. I'll always start from a position of yes, and then collaboratively work out how to get there. Like I said, I don't know how a sausage factory works, but I know that people will know how it works in that sausage factory, and I can assist them in finding out how to control the hazards there quite well, if we use that as an analogy. And I do the exact same in my construction career. So I'll bring up the slides. Some of this is again my perception and how I came into the health and safety world as a veteran. It shows you how my brain thinks. Some of it's a bit funny, some of it's tongue in cheek, and just take it as a, you know, just part of the book I'll probably never write. They say there's a great book in everyone. I've been searching for a while and I still can't find it. This is the sort of stuff that I would probably include in that. I've got a working title actually. It's halfway there, and I'll probably talk about a little bit about that as we go through the presentation. But it'll be something that will never be written. Okay, let's see if I can get this done, Helen. Let's bring it up. Let's share screen. Right. So, 2 seconds. Sorry, folks, I can't even find my slides. Slides are there. Drop down. I'm sorry, Helen, I can't seem to find my slides at the moment. Let me just have a look.
So when you've clicked on share screen, is it not coming up with your PowerPoint?
No, it was.
Is it definitely open?
There it is. There, I've got it. I've got it.
It should already be sharing the sound if you've done it once. So
I'll probably go back out again and just give it another. I'll give it one more try. Yeah, it's still there. So there and share. Okay, well, here we go then. So in terms of this is again my perception, everyone, how I see my life as a health and safety practitioner. You know, before we look at this first slide, and I don't know how we all think about this, I was on a Midlands chat today. It was excellent. Rachel, can't remember Rachel's second name, No, so it was Tyne. It was a Tyne one. And Rach, they had a sort of a round table, and they just started off a chat about how do we see health and safety developing in the future, especially this year. And they came to me, and I said, well, I don't particularly like the words health and safety, and I shouldn't really say that as immediate past president of our institution. But I think these words, health and safety, now are getting a little bit dated, and we should be looking at other words. What those other words are, I don't know. How we would change our institution's name, I don't know. But those sort of words, health and safety, don't really resonate a lot with people that I speak to on site. And it was quite an interesting conversation. I don't know if they taped it, I don't know if you can see it, but that Tyne branch one today for the hour was a great conversation on how we look at ourselves as health and safety practitioners. And this one here, I always use my veteran background as a go-to for how I see health and safety. And I use this slide an awful lot. Now, some of you will be saying, who's that handsome chap with the 3 white stripes? Well, that's actually me at 28 in 1996 on my 3rd trooping of the colour, Her Majesty's Trooping of the Colour. And I was with F Company then, and we were trooping the Irish Guards troop. And the chap on the far side there, the client, is Tam Steele, someone I looked up to for years and years. Big John Lynn is standing next to him. Then there's me, and there's Geordie Coops next to me, and then you can see everyone else, you know, with Geordie Coops, and I think that was young Ben Taylor at the operatives. And I use this as a slide to explain how my thought process works in health and safety, and it works very similar to being in a regiment. And unless you've served, I always say this, and I shall get this, is that you're always broken. And unfortunately, that's the only word I can think of. You're brought into a certain set of thinking, and if you push against it, the harder it is. And then eventually you are at that new coat, and you are broken, and you're sort of institutionalized to a certain degree. And you follow a sort of disciplined chain of command. And this part here is all about holding the line. And we can go back hundreds of years to sort of, you know, when Waterloo defeated Napoleon against the odds, and it was holding that line. And you probably hear the thin red line. You'll see it in American films for want, but you also see it in lots of old-fashioned films here, that there's that red line and we hold the line. And for me in health and safety, those words that sort of play about in my brain a little bit, that holding the line is something that needs to be done in terms of honouring the client, honouring yourself as a principal contractor, honouring your subcontractors, and honouring your black hats, supervisors and the operatives. And if you're all in a straight line and you're all aligned, everything's golden. But when you start to move out of that line, people start to panic, people start to shout, people start to get angry, people start to make decisions to try and get you back into line. And I equate that a lot to absolutely health and safety, because that's exactly what we do. So for me, what can I do? All I want to do is to make sure that in terms of our health and safety, we are doing the right thing. And by doing the right thing, it means that we all must be in the same line. And that's why I use this slide quite a lot. Okay, I'm not particularly saying that I'm holding the line there as the sergeant next to John Lynn, next to Tam Steele. But what I'm trying to say is that if I respect and have the black hats on my left, and I have the principal contractor as a subcontractor, and I'm keeping that line straight, then everybody is going to be walking in the same line. And that's why I use this one slide quite a lot. It takes me 10 minutes to explain for that exact purpose. And that's how my brain works, coming from my armed forces career. This slide is how my brain works. And I just want to explain to you in sort of 6 pictures how I see, how I do my job on a construction site with 1,100 operatives per day and another 200 sitting in the office. I'm on the 19 Elms project. Some of you might have seen it in construction news. We're going through a bit of a hard time at the moment, but hopefully that won't last too long. And again, this is how my brain works in terms of smart safety. So for me, the job's not about the health and safety and being that person that goes on site to see people doing things wrong or to identify hazards. That's not my job. My job is to try and influence as many people as I can through how I see things happening. So you can see the banana there. That's my sort of picture about nutrition. You know, if in my construction site I've got a very poor canteen or a very poor kitchen, again, what do they say about the army? Always marches on its stomach. So if I've got good welfare facilities and good food, then people will use the canteen, people will feel a little bit settled, they won't complain. They've got another thing that they don't have to complain about, and let's be honest, operatives will always find something to complain about. Then that's in my head, the banana, nutrition, helping. The greatest thing that you can do, I think, as a platoon sergeant or a company sergeant major or a commanding officer or a rank in leadership, is to have the hearts and minds. And one of the things for me that I took from my army days was this hearts and minds approach, was to make sure that we're looking after all the heating, making sure there's enough seats in the canteen, making sure that the water's always hot in the changing rooms, making sure we've got enough showers, make sure we've got enough latrines, make sure we've got enough supervision, making sure we've got enough feedback, making sure that we can allow the operatives and the supervisors to be able to talk. That hearts and minds approach to try and cover all the bases. The other bit there where you can see the gut, that's a picture of the gut, by the way, it's not a drain pipe, is about stress for me. How do we get people to come to work and be less stressful? Well, we make sure that they've got good nutrition, we make sure there's good canteen, we make sure they've got a safe working environment, make sure they've got good supervisors, good leadership, that they've got a good area to rest. Those are the things that don't stress them out. Make sure that they know when they're working, that they've got the good hours, that they're getting paid, all those things behind it. And then you see the cross at the bottom, first aid. No, it's not about first aid though. That for me is not about first aid. That's about well-being, making sure that we've got the right things there. Again, which flows into hearts and minds, which flows into nutrition, which flows into, again, stress, to make sure that we have lots of things we can do. We have mental health first aiders, we have people on site, we have people that can talk to people. We don't have robots that can say, how are you? We have people that can engage in conversations. So that part there in wellness is not just about asking the question, it's about how do we get our operations team to be able to ask the questions correctly. I was saying something funny today in the Midlands one, where I never go on site and ask anybody how they are. I always tell them how I am. So I'll go on to site and I'll stand there and watch, and somebody will say to me, can I help you, or is anything wrong? I say, no, nothing's wrong at all. I just thought I would come up here. I'm a little bit bored sitting in the office, you know, and I start engaging about what I'm doing, and then they start engaging about what they're doing. One of the things I really, really don't like is saying, how are you? Fine, close question, move on. You know, that for me, this whole first aid cross part here is about the whole of well-being. How do we engage? And then of course we have that toolbox talk. The toolbox is not about toolbox talks, it's about my toolbox. It's about my operational team's toolbox. How can I help my operational team to engage smartly with all those on site? Well, sort of being a bit of a mini me in some ways, and not being that person that's the go-to person. I'm more of a sort of consultant on site, more of a sort of somebody you can collaborate with, somebody you can shoot things past to try and build up the operational team, because it's the operational team that you're there to support. That's what I see. So if I was a private in the army, I'm there to support my section commander, who supports a platoon sergeant, who supports a platoon commander, who supports the bigger picture. Or I'm a platoon sergeant that's looking after the development of my junior ranks. So that part of it is always with me in terms of health and safety. And then the final one there, I call it my 70-30, because you can't engage with people if you sit at your desk all day. And we all know people who are the other way around. We all know people who are the 70% sit at their desk and the 30% will go outside and engage. And we all know the people that are the 30% that sit at their desk because they have to, and then be that 70% that goes out and engages. Because for me, it's all about people. We'll all disagree about this, But for me, I prefer the word soft skills. People like to say power skills. For me, it's not. It's about those soft skills, that engagement piece. And for me, this is where the halfway there comes in, because I have all this, I believe, and it's all here through 24 years of being in the army, and I was in the army 87 to 2011. I've been out of the army for more than nearly over half that time now, or just approaching half that time. I can say that in terms of those skills, I have them. And some people might take a long time to get them. So I always say, as a veteran, you're always halfway there because you have all these skills. Teach me what to do, be it retail, catering, hospitality, health and safety, engineering, project management, project design, all those things I can learn, but I've got these key skills that are halfway there. So this is how my brain works. You need to indulge me a little bit here on this one. And I played the one tune and Tom had a little bit of a laugh, and I think Helen did as well. So I'm going to play all the 3 tunes and then I'm going to come back. So just some of you will recognise these tunes, especially the first one. So there'll be people of a certain age like me on the call. Some of our junior members will go, what's that? They'll need to Google it. And then the second tune will be very strong. It's a really famous film. If you go back a few years, that you remember. And then the last tune is a famous pop song by the great Jimmy Cliff. So just indulge me for about a minute and a half, or not even that, a minute, and then I'll come back to you all. Right, I can't see anybody laughing, so what I'll do is at the moment I'll just take it that some of you got that, and probably maybe some of you didn't get it. But the whole point of that is, sorry, I'll go back. The whole point of those slides are, this was my perception when I first became a health and safety lead. And when I got the job as a health and safety lead, it was for Babcock back in 2011, working for my best friend now, Simon Donnelly, an awesome individual. And basically, the first time I went to a site, I was like Benny Hill, because whenever I said jump as a sergeant major in the army, people jumped. And now I'm saying to people to jump, people going, who are you? Really? And I had no clue of any other way. And it was only when I started going to the South Coast branch that I started to understand my language, not that it was full language, it was a different language from that as a civilian. So I used to run about all over the place. It was really like the Benny Hill show. I really didn't know who to speak to, who to converse to. I found organisational structure very, very alarming, because there really wasn't one. And there was managers, but nobody was really following that. And so for me, it was really the Benny Hill show. I was running around all over the place. And then, of course, because I didn't really know what I was doing as a health and safety advisor, I became very dark. And it was that way. It was black and white. It was straight down. And when people saw me coming, the omen must have been going off in their head. They must have been thinking, oh my God, the devil is here. Because it was the only thing I knew was what I read. And some of the stuff I was reading wasn't about me being a Jimmy Quinn, the way that I see myself now, but following a template of what good looked like. And so it wasn't a particularly great time, that first 18 months for me. And then one morning I did wake up, and it was Jimmy Cliff. It really was, that I could see clearly, because in order to be the best person I could be as a health and safety advisor, become manager, senior manager, area manager, I've done all the roles, was to be someone who could relate to people, who could talk to people. And I was never in the army one of those sweary, shouty type figures. I was always someone who could put an arm around someone, who could develop people. And I thought, what am I doing here? Why am I trying to be something I'm not? Be yourself as you were, but be yourself in a different career. And so when I woke up to that fact, wow, it was a day of enlightenment. And that came very, very quickly before I deployed out to Abu Dhabi to take over a sort of construction league in Abu Dhabi in 2014. So I spent those next couple of years developing me in terms of health and safety, but still being the same person, if that makes any sense. This shows you how much outside the box I think. You know, for me, one of the biggest things that I teach, or sorry, not teach, but try to put over to my operational team, and I've got an operational team that have been in the business 40 years, and some have been in the business 3 years, some have just graduated, and I treat them all the same and try and identify hazards. And one of the biggest things that we have that I always identify hazards is inattention blindness. And I use it all the time. Inattention blindness, as we know, you only see one thing until you open your eyes. How many times have you driven down that street and you've never seen a McDonald's or a KFC, and then wow, you see it, and it's all you can do not to pull in every time you go past it? Or your favourite restaurant, or a restaurant or food that you like, and or the sweet shop that does the old-fashioned, well, they haven't to call them 100 grams now, but the old quarters, and you go, oh no, there's that sweet shop again. You've never seen it before. Once you see it, you cannot see it. And that's the way that I do it. I use our famous gorilla. I use the basketball. I use Magic Sing. I use Derren Brown. I don't go to the go-to parts about hazard perception and hazard awareness. I sort of think outside the box, because for me, there's got to be a bit of fun in it. And I don't take myself that seriously. And that's probably something that I always have to work on, and probably been something that I should have worked on a lot harder. But as I approach probably the end of my second career, got about 7 years left before I retire at 60, then I'm probably a little bit too late in it. And I'll probably always stick to this part, because that informal formality and that formal informality, see if you can understand that one, is the way that I want to try and operate, and have done for a long time. And if you saw me last year when I was president, that was the way I was. And then we have that second picture there about the collaborate, the challenge. You know, nothing's ever good enough for me. If I know something's wrong, then it's usually wrong. But I don't get my way to tell people that it's wrong. I just ask challenging questions with respect. If you can challenge respectfully, then that's fantastic. And then the influence. Every Wednesday afternoon, every Friday afternoon, and Ash can back me up on this, you would have a commanding officer's PT in the morning or lunchtime, and then you would then leave, go and leave on a Friday afternoon about 3 o'clock for a long weekend or a weekend, and you would finish. But you would call everybody in and give them the message for the week. And that was at Chelsea Barracks in 2019, May, June 2019, before COVID. And every week I'd spend £200 on donuts, on vouchers, Amazon vouchers, and I would get everybody around, and I would award the Black Hat, the youngest on site, one of the operatives on site, just to get them that hearts and minds. So you can see all that stuff I was talking about in my pictures earlier on is the sort of stuff that I used every day. A lot of you are looking at that picture and saying, what is this crazy guy up to? This is the boiling frog, and I love the boiling frog. Boiling frog is something that is in the front cover of my notebook. I've got a picture of it, always to remind me. It's on my laptop there as well. And the boiling frog is that sort of urban myth that if you put a frog in a pot of boiling water, or sorry, a pot of cold water, if you slowly raise the temperature, then allegedly the frog will absorb that temperature. And when it comes to leave, because it's getting too hot, it's expended so much energy that it can't then move. And then allegedly the frog will die. Now, I don't believe that anybody's actually tried this, but that's the analogy, that's the urban myth. And for me, that's what goes on in my head all the time. Because again, in the army, tactics are always changing. They're always coming to new things. They're always moving, never stand still. And for me, I never stand still. My brain is always going all the time. And I'm always thinking about other things and things that we can do to make things better. And even today, I was looking at something, I'm saying, I created that. Now I think I can make it better. And that thing for me, not just as a veteran, but the boiling frog is something for me that keeps me engaged. And when I see the picture, when I look in the morning, when I open up my notebook, if I'm going to a meeting, I'm going, right, what's going to come out in this meeting today that I can write down, that then I can do, that can help move on anything that they're talking about. So for me, the boiling frog is something that's part of me. I talk about it a lot. It was something that I read about and something that I believe has helped me in my health and safety journey. So that was just a little throw in there. Thought it'd be funny. So in terms of using those great words, and I'll start with that: enhance, we're going to collaborate, we're going to influence. This picture you see here was a veteran who had got out of the army, was in his 60s, had been in the Royal Engineers, and said, Jimmy, the way that we lift these cages has got to be better. And I said, right, fine. I said, crack on, let's have a look at it. And he came back to me and he said, I know nothing. Well, I know a lot now, but I didn't know anything as much as I should have known about lifting cages at that time. And basically, he came back to me and he said, this is the way I'd like to do it. You wouldn't find it in any manual. He said, let's put another exo-type skeleton around the outside. Let's use that with the cage as well, so that if something does slip, even though we're using all the right lifting techniques, then we're covered. It was an extra 20 minutes work, so we did it. But what did that do? Well, it then enhanced the whole workforce. It didn't just enhance my understanding and something we then used on other sites, which we did, but it also enhanced everybody else's understanding, that the fact that they could come and talk and get things done. And again, going back to that veteran piece, you always listen to those people that have got good things to say. I mean, Sir Clive Woodward surrounded himself with the best coaches in the country. He wasn't the greatest coach, but he got the best people around him. And that's what I try to do. I try to listen to the best people around me. Now, this part here is a collaboration. Those of you that are temporary works gurus in construction will see that this here is at the top here. There's a couple of pieces of rebar that have been put together as a support to do these cages. And, you know, I couldn't believe it when I saw that. And this was an industry standard for a long time. So the first thing I said was, I'm not having this. Let's look at something different. But Jimmy, this is the way we've always done it. Famous words. Let's do something else. So we got temporary works involved. We got the loads, the figures, everything done. And we came up with a system. We started with this one here, which was some scaffold tube tripods that we had set up. And then we came up with this one here. And this was Keltbury, one of our stakeholders in a lot of our sites in multiplex. Proper drawings, proper loading. And basically what you do is they slide it through. They then build the rebar cage at height, because what they were doing before they did this at the top here with the rebar parts there bent, they were actually on the ground bent over doing it. And now they're working at sort of 5 foot. They then get the cages then lifted slightly. They pull out the poles, lift it away, put it down and set it up for the lift. And this was again a collaborative effort. Now I couldn't say that's wrong. It just looked wrong to me. And so that collaborative effort, using those amazing people around me, again, teamwork from my armed forces days, was something that got an amazing result. And this again goes back to this hearts and minds part, everyone. This is a sort of hearts and minds from my perspective about influence. And how do you actually influence people? Well, you influence people by giving them great things. You treat them with respect. You try to make sure that you're loyal to them and treat them with a bit of honesty. And this whole back area here was supposed to be a loading area. And funny enough, this back part here in the middle picture here is right behind, it's the back garden to Philip Hammond, who was the Chancellor of the Exchequer. We had so many complaints, but his back garden was just down the road from there. And it was so funny. That was bang centre in the middle of Chelsea. This is the old Chelsea Barracks project, which again was great for me because I had served at Chelsea Barracks. So imagine me going back to Chelsea Barracks as a veteran, a health and safety chap, and looking at the whole barracks. It was now these amazing multi-million-pound apartments that had been bought by Qatari DR. And I'm looking at areas where the church was, where the sergeant's mess was, where the accommodation was, where the NAFI was, all those great things. And then for me to be able to ask the subcontractors to create something and give them a little bit of land outside, which I had to fight for, going back to that welfare, going back to that hearts and minds. And we used We used to do this every month, even in the rain, even in the snow, every month. The chicken man would come in, you know, the pork man would come in, you know, we'd have burgers every other month, and you weren't allowed to use your mobile phone in this area. You could sit there, you could relax, you could put your mobile phone on to listen to music, but you weren't allowed to talk on it. And that was an area to go and read. Okay, in the winter it was a little bit subdued, but that was a really nice area. So again, going down that hearts and minds route for me. And that's about it. I mean, it's just a quick presentation. I follow the great Tim Briggs as probably the first career-serving veteran to become president, who's been a massive part of my life since I joined council back in 2015, and someone who I look to. So to be able to sit in from today and give you how I look at the world through a veteran and a health and safety practitioner, looking after 6 sites in London, one of them my own, is hopefully just giving you a little insight how my brain works. So thank you for indulging me.
Jimmy, I wrote down loads and loads and loads of things, but I've heard you speak 2 or 3 times, at least, probably a lot more than that. And you talk about influence and collaboration and everything else. You have never, ever, ever ceased to amaze me with your lectures. And that's about as sycophantic as I'm going to get, but it is as genuine as you deserve, because you do deserve it. And I know that your idol is Tim Briggs, as he is mine. And I know that he will be very proud to hear you talk the way you have done tonight. Ash, can we go over to any questions?
Absolutely. So there's only one question really, which is, do you believe that respect must work both ways?
Well, I mean, that's an easy question to ask, Ash. I don't know where that came from, but it's got to go both ways. I mean, we've got to be able to respect ourselves initially, and we've got to be able to show us. Sometimes you might not want to. Sometimes I saw a great video the other day there about a Chinese chap in China at a school who's on a really bad day, and he stops outside his classroom door, gives himself a shake, smiles, and then walks into the classroom and smiles. And people said, why? Why did you do that? So because they don't deserve to know what's going on in my life and how bad a day I've had. I've got to let them know what life's about, and by me smiling, it puts them in a great place. And for me, sometimes people forget that they've got a job to do, and they might not realise that their bad day is going to cause someone else's bad day. So you've got to be respectful of other people. You've got to be respectful of, and one of the biggest things that I learned as well, Ash, was during lockdown, some of our operatives were travelling 2 hours a day, really worried, because this is right at the start in sort of May, June 2020. And they were having really bad days, and I was having a really bad day because at the time I was driving 250 miles a day, 110 miles a day, going backwards and forwards up the A303 because there was no trains, very apocalyptic, and I was feeling like a really bad day. But respect definitely goes both ways, mate. And the biggest thing for me, not the biggest challenge, but the biggest thing for me is that if you don't do it, as a person, word travels very, very fast. So if you want to be a leader and you're on site and there's 1,000 people, if you're disrespectful to one person, then you're not going to come back from that. So you've really got to be careful, especially as a health and safety practitioner. You are seen as a leader, and you've got to be respectful to everyone, even if you sometimes feel that you're hitting the head against the brick wall. So yeah, I absolutely agree. Whoever asked that question, 100%. I think that's a no-brainer.
Brilliant. Well, it's certainly opened the floodgates incoming. Irfan is asking, what were the best army-related habits you've been able to implement, and what was the hardest habit to shake off?
What was the best army-related habit? Okay, the best one was teamwork. I mean, that was an easy one for me. I mean, I've always been a team player. I've shared this with a lot of people, so I'm not going to. I was in a home for the age of around 12, so my teenage formative years. I was in care, and I really didn't have a family until I left the army. I was too old. Nobody wanted me. I'm getting emotional now. Anyway, so I left the home. I got into a bit of chefing. Then I joined the army, and I found where I had to be. And so for me, that family, that having each other's back, I will always tell my project director and my construction director, I am here to have your back. And I take that role very seriously. I'm here to protect you. You might think that you don't need protected, but I know when you do. And my construction director, Peter Laridis, fantastic guy, always says to me, if anybody pipes up, they'll say, listen, that's Jimmy's job. So if you don't like it, come and speak to me and we'll have a separate conversation. But he's here to protect us. You may not see it, and that having someone's back is the best one. The hardest one to shake off was, and this is, and it's with me every day, is that one where my standards are not everybody else's standards. And you've got to be able to accept that. You've got to be able to accept that if that happens, you've got to be able to help them and assist them. And even if they continue not to come up to your standard, they'll get there eventually. And every little bit is what you've got to do. So I'll spend a lot of people that don't really get it and really find it difficult to understand what that's about. So that's the hardest one for me to shake off. But I'm starting to use it now more as a strength than an area for development, Ash. That's a great question.
I certainly concur with you on that, Jimmy. You know, 2 years in BRNC and Naval College, it just doesn't leave you, does it? So things are just the way they are sometimes. Chris Nag is asking, if you were starting your health and safety career again, what would you do differently? Good question, Chris.
Well done, Nag. If I was starting my health and safety career, what would I do differently? I don't know, Chris. I think I would, yeah, definitely. I wouldn't make all the mistakes that I made, I think. I think I would grow up a little bit quicker. Being in the army, you had that opportunity as a non-commissioned officer, sorry, as a private, I was a guardsman. And then 2.5 years I became a non-commissioned officer, which was quite fast. And then I became an instructor within 5 years. And I was still very immature. So I think one of the things I would do is I would probably, if I was myself now, I would go back and say, make some of the same mistakes you made, because you need to make those little mistakes, but mature a bit quicker. I think I was still very, very much immature. I mean, I look at my son now, Macaulay, who's 23 last week, Friday, and he wants to do health and safety now. So he was going to be an army officer, and he decided, no, I don't want to do that now, Dad. He went down and he said, Westbury, he said, Dad, I didn't like it. He said, I know it was my plan A, but my plan B was health and safety. So we're now looking at putting him through his SMSTS, his NEBOSH construction. He's going to start his MSc in October. And I've been coaching him for the last couple of months now. So hopefully he'll pass his NEBOSH construction when he takes it on the 1st of March. And then hopefully everything will happen. But that boy's got so much more maturity about him now at 23 than I had. So to answer your question, Chris, I would probably send a message back to my other self and say, listen, grow up a little bit, mate. You can't be that person at 23, at 25, 26, grow up a little bit quicker. So a little bit more mature, I think.
Lovely, that's a great response. From Carl Spencer, what got you into health and safety after such a long army career? He himself served 26 years and sort of fell into health and safety, but what was it that got you into that, Jimmy?
Who was that from, Ash?
That's Carl Spencer.
Yeah, Carl, I totally concur, mate. I mean, as you're probably, I don't know what rank you got to, but my last 2 years, I was the warrant officer in charge of all the on-demand equipment, and it's called on-demand. That's what it's called. I don't mean to upset anybody, but the OTM, and that was every piece of kit that you'd see a soldier wearing when they were in operations. And for those 2 years, I was in charge of doing the thing called the RIP, relief in place, and you do 2 a year. One sort of in January and one sort of August. So you weren't doing a lot for the other sort of 8 months of the year. And I was very lucky where when you get to warrant officer status, you tend to be in a seated role, an office role, and you do more sort of facilities management. And I thought, well, let me try and combine that. See if the station commander wants a hand. I'll do some health and safety courses. But my view was never to be a practitioner. It was always to be somebody that trained in it, because I did my PGCE, I was an instructor, I knew how to talk to people, I knew how to raise my voice, lower my voice, do a presentation, and that was the way I was going until my great friend Simon Donnelly heard me doing a presentation on a webinar back in 2011 and said, you should be actually doing this as a practitioner. So I kind of fell into it, but I was going to be a trainer, mate, and then I changed it to be more of a practitioner. Probably similar to yourself in some ways.
Brilliant. Question from Dominic Horth. Just left the Royal Navy Submariner, taking up a role as a health and safety coordinator in telecoms. Currently doing NEBOSH deployment. What did you know of the health and safety sector to get into? Is it just trial and error?
Well, for me, that's another great question, Dom. For me, Dom, it was about, I always wanted to be outside. So it could have been telecoms when I'm outside, but I wanted to be able to create teams. And quite funnily enough, when I got the job in Multiplex in Abu Dhabi, Matt Hewitt, who came from a forces family, although he hadn't served, said, Jimmy, I've got the best project manager in the business in this job, and I've got the best construction manager. There's nothing you can tell them about construction. You can tell them a little bit about health and safety, but they know a lot. You help me build a team, and I will teach you construction, and I will teach it to you right. And I thought, wow, what a great guy. So he wanted me to be his health and safety manager, not because of my experience in construction and health and safety, Dom. He wanted me there because he wanted me to build a team. And a team I built, starting from one, and myself and Abdul Rahman, we built a team of 36, 3 health and safety managers. One was a scientist, meteorologist. One blew up bridges for a living in the Royal Engineers. Another one was a graduate straight out of Darlington College with a fire management degree. And all of my safety officers were all off the tools as well. So that was why I got into health and safety and construction, because I could see the same mindset of that hierarchy and building teams and getting things done in processes and procedures and discipline. That for me was the reason. Now, I've noticed you're doing the NEBOSH diploma. Do you know, I studied that for 6 months before I actually did it, and it nearly killed me. And please don't make the same mistake as I did. When you do your module D, follow the guidelines. Because I studied for 6 months, I got A's in A, B, and C, and in D, I failed it. Not once, but twice, because I knew better that how it should be set up, not the NEBOSH way. So please, Dom, if you're going to do the diploma, follow that as a great guide. But yeah, because it was the same sort of team ethic, Dom.
And the last question from an anonymous. As a health and safety practitioner, do you have to intervene when you see unsafe practice, or should you support the site team to intervene? I guess the question I'm trying to ask is, are we failing in our duty of care if we don't directly intervene?
It depends what they're doing, actually. So if they're on a hop up and they're balancing, then you try and approach it from a different perspective and sort of get round in front of them. You don't sneak up on them. You certainly don't take photographs, which I see a lot of. That was something I stamped out in my construction site. People working unsafely at height, and people are standing there 10 feet away from them taking a photograph. That's something that really winds me up. But you've got to try and educate. Who asked that question, Ash?
He'd rather not be named, and I don't blame him.
Oh, no, okay, fantastic. I thought you said a name and I'd missed it. So for me, that is definitely something that we've got to get into your operational team. Your operational team needs to be a sort of clone of you, you know, and I need to watch what I'm saying, because when I went to the site that I'm at now, the health and safety manager before me had not engaged with the operational team and had engaged with 24 other health and safety leads from the trade contractors. And the first thing I did was, like, you know this, Ash, going from one unit to a new unit, I engaged straight away and started to find out who were the movers and the shakers. So it's getting that philosophy from you to your health and safety leads by speaking to the wider team, and I speak to them twice a week in a meeting, and then going on site with your operational leads and trying to educate them. Hopefully that sort of answers the question. If it doesn't, I'll try and go again.
I certainly agree with that as well, Jimmy. Very last question. From Alan Galloway, do we think behavioural-based safety should be more at the forefront of safety tackling the issues at the root?
Can you put that into more simpler words for me, Ash? Being unable.
Do we think behaviour-based safety should be what we choose to tackle the root issues, the root problems of the issues that we're seeing? So tackling behaviour, changing behaviour, shaping that behaviour.
I'm not a big fan of, golly, I'm going to get myself in trouble here. I'm not a big fan of this sort of words of behavioural-based safety. For one, I don't really understand what it means. For me, it's more about educating people. So if that's about getting on site and using inattention blindness, videos, speaking to people, being somebody that's friendly, being somebody that goes up and has a chat, being somebody that talks about them being the subject matter expert and what they could do better, being about the words which I don't particularly like, and I've said that, health and safety, talking about words like respect, honesty, loyalty, those sorts of words, I think are the way to, if we want to call it behavioural-based safety. Everybody has their own way of doing it. I'm not a big fan of safety differently, even though John Green's one of my closest pals and mentors. I like safety differently when it's safety done differently. So your approach to safety and educating people done in a different funny way or a different better way is the way I look at it. But I read about behavioural-based safety, and Darren Sutton, again, a real old friend of mine, absolutely knows it inside out. But for me, behavioural-based safety is about me being able to impart my understanding, my ethos to people about how they should go about their work. And if they go about their work in a competent, safe, honest, loyal, respectful manner, then for me, maybe that's what behavioural safety is about in my head. Hope that answered the question.
That's great. Fantastic answers to those questions, Jimmy. Thank you so much for your time. Tom, back to you.
Okay.
Thank you, Ash.
Jimmy, on behalf of everybody that's attended, thank you. You are infectious. Your people are going to walk away with at least one of the phrases, if it's only how to boil a frog. Now, my new one, Tom, is formally informal and formally formal, because I don't know what it means, and I'm trying to work out what it means. So Chris Nag is going to be all over that now, and he's going to come back to me and say, yes,
this is what that means.
you do, and if Tim Briggs had been sat here, he'd have told you exactly what it was as well.
I've got a Scooby-Doo. I just made it up one day. Sorry, I'm looking a bit tired. I've been up since 4:30 this morning, so apologies.
Right. Well, thank you for standing in. It has been a great pleasure, and thank you for giving us your time. You've done it for the last 12 months and more. It's now that we're going to start meeting face to face, people will get to know you that little bit better, and you'll be able to get that message across.
The first round is on me, Tom. The first round is on me. Then it's on Chris Nags. I think he's got his hand up.
Yes. Are you going to say something? Unmute. Here we go. Helen, can we unmute Chris Nags, please?
Yeah, it's okay now. Should be able to unmute.
That's all right. I'll take the abuse, Jimmy. I'll get you at playtime. We'll definitely be having a drink when next we get together. For sure.
I can't wait, Chris. I absolutely can't wait.
Thanks for tonight. It's been inspirational as always.
Thank you so much for giving me all your time. Wonderful.
Not a problem.
Take care, all.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Good evening, all. Night, night.
Cheers, Jimmy.
Thank you very much. Bye, all. Take care.